Okay, I am going to get started for now, just because I have to run at around 5:30, so I can't stay too long. Busy day. I believe, let me see, we can start with Jesse's first, since it's supposed to be a more shorter. Hello, welcome. We're just doing our monthly critique for my disciples tier from Patreon. Just waiting for a couple more people to pop in. Hello, Jesse. It's been a while since I've seen you pop your head around here. And lucky you, we get to start with you first. Okay, let me bust this into another layer so we can talk about how to make this man look more humongo. So let me pull up some images of some bodybuilders so we can take a look at what the peak human physique is supposed to look like. Okay, so let's look up some bodybuilders. So some things you're gonna notice already is just the size of the delts right here and the pecs, and they typically focus on upper body with some emphasis of that lower body. I'm pretty sure this is AI, so I don't trust that. Collecting references, you is correct. Always just, whenever I see something, I just throw into a subsection. But anyway, look at those built ass delts. Damn, like the man spent hours. So how are we gonna compare this to you? The man is sadly lacking some delts and some pecs. So we're going to give ourselves, right, some ripped ass muscles. So one way we can do that, let me see how I want to do this. Okay, I'm just gonna cover up some things. Actually, let's do this. I will give you them guidelines first, and then we'll cover up and mess around with your shit. So I want to give him Dorito. I want to give him Chris Evans' body, so always try to create that V shape that you can see for the chest, the torso. And then let's make that pec pop out. Pops out. Give him some booba. And some shapes that you can consider for the shoulders is you can start using more of those circle shapes and oval shapes, especially for these muscles. Obviously, real life muscles, they're not circles, but this is a good shape for you to kind of put down, so when you connect them, you can kind of just draw a nice curve to connect them, right? And you can even consider exaggerating a little bit more than what you have here. We can make the shoulder just a slightly bigger. We still want to make sure that it somehow has the ability to connect to that, what's it called? is that called the trapeze muscle? I don't know what muscle that's called, but basically your shoulder muscle up here, it has to have enough space to connect to it. So use your circles, and then we're going to create 2 curves. When it's bending like this, the bicep is contracting because it's pulling your arm upwards, versus say if your arm is straight, stick straight, your tricep is pulling. So when you're drawing the arm straight, you might see bigger triceps, especially for like bodybuilders, versus if you are flexing, you probably see more of the bicep popping out in that aspect. So let's hide some stuff and let's fix this shit up. Let's shrink that down. And this is a pretty easy fix if you have your layers separated. I don't have it separated, so we're just gonna have to work our magic with Liquify as best as we can. So let's give him booba, and let's also give him back. And you have the right idea about having that thick ass neck, because with muscle comes the need for a strong, stable column. So the neck needs to be thick enough in order to accommodate that until it feels right. Yeah, that works to an extent, because when you feel that it's right, it's all these intuitions that you build up over time. Whether or not they are actually correct, it just depends. If you've studied enough, like masters, then obviously their intuition is going to be 100% correct, but obviously there's still a little bit of flaws here and there, since the human memory is very shitty. But that's why we don't want to solely rely on intuition. Sometimes you want to just double check a little bit using some references. So anyone who tells you that references is for noobs, you can tell them they can go fuck off. I think I've seen like even like professional artists, they're still using references, especially with like animation. They're not going to know how every single body part is going to move in space, considering we don't spend every waking moment just like analyzing every movement that a person makes. So they're gonna record themselves doing that movement and use that as a reference in order to animate their characters. Okay, and then I'm also going to just make sure that this arm is thick enough to match the muscles that is going on. So not too skinny for the wrist, and we're gonna give him some muscles here too. Okay, so before, after, already significant amount of muscle mass has been put on this man. He has been juicing it up with the steroids. Now I'm just going to correct some of the anatomy that is slightly off. So for the side right here on the ribs, let me see if I have a side view, like a good side. So we're gonna have this big lats right here, and then these subsiding rib muscles, I like to call it. I believe there is a really good artist with a reference. Let me see if I remember her name. And male torso. What's her name? Starts with a V. Artist. Let me see if I can find it. If I cannot find it in this particular session, I will search it up in my saves, because I do have her as a follow for my Instagram. Anyway, regardless, that means when you're drawing the male torso or the male chest in this particular angle, first thing you have to do is connect the pecs to the armpit. That way we get that nice separation between the arm and the pecs. And then I just want to make sure that since his arm is contracting, he's doing big ol' flex, he has the muscle to show for it. So give me a slight little flex. And you can do slight overlap, okay? So the deltoid sits on top. Sits right on top. Ooh, yeah, sits right on top of the biceps and the triceps. So there's going to be a slight overlap when it comes to drawing this shoulder part. So make sure you draw the line extending above it. We don't want to see this happening. It doesn't make much sense. And it's gonna go into the uncanny valley. So you might think any size muscle. Kind of. Like you can kind of break down most of the muscles into either an oval or a circle. This very, what's it called? Default shape for bodybuilders that I've seen for like most cartoons is they are going to aim for this triangle shape and then these big ass ovals. And more of these diagonal lines. So this kind of looks like a bodybuilder, even though none of the muscles are actually being drawn in and none of them is really accurate. But this is how you typically see bodybuilder shapes, right? And so if you can think about the body in these terms, so when you're drawing them, it can kind of guide you a little bit. Even if you don't know exactly what the muscle should be. Obviously, if you want it to be super like accurate, you definitely do have to spend some time studying muscles, go back to some studies, but just for our purposes, we can kind of cheat a little bit, you know? Okay, let me fix that weirdness I got from the liquify. And then collarbone wise, this baby is going to connect to the top of your shoulder. Connects to the right here, connects to that top of that pecs, connects to the top of that shoulder. Yeah, right? Like if you cannot for the life of you, because I admit sometimes it's for certain angles or certain poses, it's just so hard for me to visualize the muscles. So I like to break it down back into like these simple shapes. As long as we get these simple shapes, you can then build up the actual details from them. And yes, you've got this right. The bicep does go over the top of that bottom arm. So huzzah. So sometimes you may see like there's a line right here between like the bicep and the tricep, and there's also this line right here. I don't like to emphasize too much of this line just because very rarely are people going to really build up this arm muscle enough for it to pop out like a bicep versus like that tricep, you know? Like this part much easier to define versus this part. Look at how defined the shoulders are compared to the pecs. Hella separation. This man is on like 1% body fat. Okay, and then tips to make the man look even more gruff is to just emphasize all the joints. So anything like the wrist right here, the thumb right here, we're gonna make it jut out more. Even for the thumb right here, we're gonna make it jut out more. That way he looks a lot more gruff. So same for here, let's make him jut out more angular. And for the fingers for men, we're gonna make him a lot more square to make him look very tough guy. I was supposed to have the Google Sheet up, but whoopsies, I forgot to. So I will make sure I do that next month so it'll be easier for me to edit stuff. But let me erase the hand so I can show you how to make him look like he's actually holding the thingy. Okay, so we're going to simplify what we see. We're going to draw the thumb, and then we're going to treat this whole section right here as one big shape. So here's your thumb, and we're going to wrap it around. And we're going to double check whether or not the hand is covering the sword. Now, if it's not covering the sword, you have a couple of options. You can either move this guy's arm down this way in order for it to fit, in order for him to be holding it like more this way, because the arm's not going to, you know, do this. This is not a very comfortable sword holding position. Not a very comfortable sword holding position. So he might just bring his arm down to accommodate that. Other option is, the easier option in my opinion, is we move the sword. So let me bust this baby into a different layer. Is this not a layer I can copy? Is that the question? Cut. Okay, so other option is take a look. Now it lines up with his hand, right? Now that is of course one option, but I'm going to give you a suggestion to make him look more lackadaisical, more casual, more like, I'm so cool, I can put a fucking sword on my shoulder because I can bear it. I would suggest we have him hold his sword higher up here so it sits more comfortably. Since the weight of the sword right here, Since the weight of the sword, if we have it sit right here, it's usually not a very comfortable position to hold versus say maybe right here, where he can kind of counterbalance and kind of weight all the stuff back here, right? Think about holding a bat. I typically would not hold it down here. It's not very comfortable. Maybe more here. But that's just my suggestion, so... Oh, hello. Hello, Greta. No biggie. Let me just erase the stuff that kind of covers him up. Oops. Eek. Eek. Okay. I'm gonna hide the sword for a second because I have another suggestion. Me and my suggestions, right? I would usually, for when I'm drawing any long object, rod-like object, sword, whatever it is in the hand, I don't do any of the details first. I want to make sure I get the pose correct before I add details. So we're just going to use a line to kind of figure out where that sword needs to go. So if you see me draw the sword this way, do you see how the sword can kind of feel a little bit wonky, like it's too closed off, not very comfortable position? So, duplicate before you hate me. Option 1 is we're going to snuff this guy's sword in a different spot. Where is it? So that's the hand. We're gonna move the sword maybe to this position. Do you see how now that also helps you create more of a diagonal? And we're all about those diagonals, right? Other option is we can put it, say, somewhere higher up here too. That will give you help you fill up the space even more. And we can go all the way out, or you can keep it, say, somewhere here. It's up to you. But let me move this hand according to that sword. And we're going to try to see how comfortable it is for this guy to actually be holding that sword. And this is a default. There is no way this arm can change this angle. The arm to the hand is always going to be in that straight angle. Like there's no way you're going to somehow detach the hand. Okay, so everything else before that though, we can kind of change the angle, change the position, see how that works. And I'm thinking that this position also feels a little bit wonky. So let's go scoot that sword down a little bit. This is probably the most comfortable for him. Because he gets to rest his elbow onto his waist. See how that can help make that pose feel a little bit more organic. But I still want to make sure I line those up a little bit better. Scoot that baby up. Okay, so we got ourselves a general idea of how that pose might look. And we'll also want to counteract this diagonal, all these diagonals. We need something that goes up now. So that means the hips, we're going to readjust it. I know you love when I make all these adjustments. But posing is a very crucial aspect in comic books, because especially when you have these panels where maybe it's all of just him. So we need something to get to reveal the story to our audience, right? So I'm gonna try to tilt his waist up a little bit so he looks like he is now leaning on that leg back there. And now we get that nice diagonal. So let's clean up our lines and actually do this on the for real though. Arm, before I forget. I didn't have a goddamn thing on this. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do a very generic shape right here, and we're going to break up the fingers. With spunk. I don't know why Twitch decided spunk is a bad word. I have never heard spunk as a bad word. Okay, so let's take a look at how gripping things look. Is this the right ankle? The knuckles descend. They descend. So I'm going to match that same descent. And then we're going to try to divide it up somewhat equally. It's not going to be perfect equal. Okay, and then you can kind of cheat a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly accurate, but you do want to make sure the hand looks like it can hold something, okay? Comic tutorials. Would you guys actually be interested in that? Like, I don't have Clip Studio, but I can just talk about general paneling and general composition things. let's all go back to our wannabe mangaka ages. Because I swear I had such a phase in high school where I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna become like a manga artist, that kind of thing. And I feel like every kid has that phase. Oh, we have so many notebooks. Okay, going back to our anatomy. So let's throw that lat muscle in there. And this is going to create that weird kind of diamond shape. And then everything else is just a very subtle musculature right here, according to the ribs. The abs, I typically don't draw the rib cage because here's the thing. The rib cage is a soft shadow and not necessarily a hard shadow. See how it's like a very soft shadow? It doesn't really, there's no real rib cage, especially when you have that much muscle sitting on top of that abdomen. So what you'll end up seeing is instead you'll just see those spicy abs. And depending on your style, you could go full out and draw every single ab, or you could just aim to be a little bit more simplified. We're going to get those hip muscles, those classic hip muscles right here, the V shape. And what you can do is you can use hatch marking if you don't feel like doing actual shading. You can either do hatch marking, so some lines to indicate that there's shadow for those muscles. And I would make sure you follow the actual curvature of the muscle. So remember our little pan of bread that we talked about a while back? So that means the muscle's going to curve this way, it's going to curve this way, and it's going to curve this way. Oops. And you're going to want to create like a nice dark shadow, especially where that pec meets the bicep. Oh, what happened to my music? Did it just die so? And then I just want you to be careful with the face in this particular angle. Your neck is not going to connect directly to the side of the jaw. There is a gap. Your neck exists, and then the back of your head also exists. I want you to remember, Jesse, we have the back of our head. So in this angle, let me go to me. At this angle, you can still see there's a gap. So don't just drop it in, okay? So we're learning today that we have a neck. Let me clean up those lines for you. So that means we're going to give a little separation, and this was also your chance to work on some of those neck muscles. So if you've never seen the neck muscle of a bodybuilder, let me see. This is not the best image. I mean, this guy close, but I can't see his freaking neck. So where's our big meaty guys? Closest one, I guess. But anyway, look at how those neck muscles become like 10 times fatter. Okay, it's to cushion all the weight. So from the head right here, we're gonna have that very defined neck right here. Then this part is another muscle. And then I guess if you have that, I'll keep that in there. I usually just do this to simplify what the muscles are doing. Because right here, I believe the collarbone is basically going to connect directly into the pec muscle right here. So you get this nice little triangle shape right here, typically. And you're going to follow the shape from that deltoid right here. And then we'll create that nice triangle gap. If you want to make him look extra muscly, you can create this up here. Let me show you. If you remember how we had our Jean-Claude Van, look at those muscles, those striations, and that's what you maybe want to do. And it's going to start from that very top of that collarbone. Okay, let me just throw back your sword. The conversation about the sword. So when you had it like this, it's going to bump into his face, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate that sword in order for it to be flat, lying on top of his shoulder instead of cutting into his shoulder. And how do we figure that out? Is we had our green line, correct? We're going to create the hilt of the sword first. It's okay if it's not perfectly accurate, we're gonna fix it. Now because this sword is round, maybe I'll add a little, I don't know, metal wall at the bottom. And now we're going to close it off. I'm gonna close it off at the angle that I want that sword to sit on. And if I remember correctly, this is that shape, right? So there's a diamond shape right here. You will definitely want to get some references of how swords look like from different angles. The only reason I know that a sword can look like this is because I studied it enough. Especially with my Knight series. I might change tilt just a little bit. And what we'll do is we're going to scoot this baby down a little bit. Since when we typically see sword users, they are holding the sword with that little metal part really, really close to their hand. Okay, and then the rest we're just going to fill in the gap. Now, I don't remember how fat you wanted your sword. Kind of looks like it's a chonker, so... And that also means that middle line is slightly off to that right. Okay, just so it doesn't cut him off completely, I'm gonna scoot it over so he doesn't slice into his neck. And rotate this guy just a little bit more. And one way you can do this, if you cannot visualize it for the life of you, we can break it down into simpler shapes. We can make this into a rectangle, which is an easier shape for you to understand, right? Okay, maybe something like this. I don't know. There's lots of different ways to draw the sword hilt. I am going to erase the stuff that's in his face so you can actually see what's going on. Okay, and so voila, his sword looks a little bit more believable, like he's holding it. Only thing I would probably do is just make his pinky, scoot it up so he looks like he's wrapped around there. Okay, so that would be how you would make this guy much more muscular. Obviously you don't have to draw every single muscle. A big sword, okay, I will make your sword even bigger then. We're gonna draw it off to the edge so you cannot see it then. And that also means the hilt needs to be heckin' fat to compensate for that size. So with big sword means big stick. Okay, so big sword with big stick should look a little bit more believable, and that way he can do whatever he wants. You can also change up the shape of the sword once you've got like the basics down. If you wanted to add like more bumps and lumps like along the way, make it more chipped, etc, etc, because obviously you don't want to do those details at the first thing because you're going to get lost in them and then you're gonna get freaked out. You're like, oh my god, I don't know how to draw a sword, it's so hard. And then I love how you're using action lines like this. I think you can even do more. Let me group. So this is sword, baby. What is this one? Oh, base dummy. And then this is muscle 101. It's not really muscle 101, but whatever. Let me delete this. Keep that in there. I will delete your sword. We don't need it. But in regards to your action lines, we can totally do way more. I would even do longer ones. So that way it frames it a little bit better. Let me see if I can use my thicker one. So I would even go to the point of the bottom ones right here. We're gonna add some tiny ones in between to darken up that shadow to really make it extra dramatic. So take a look at how your favorite mangaka really heightens up those shadows and light. Do you see how that now adds a sense of kind of framing? It's like a vignette a little bit. And so you don't just have that gap between those lines. And I believe there are brushes that people have made that just have this like action line like this, so you don't actually have to draw it. And I'm pretty sure Clip Studio most definitely has it. But because I am a noob, I'm a scrub, and I don't have Clip Studio, I'd have to do this by hand, just like the old-fashioned way. Okay, that's not perfectly straight, but whatever. You get the idea. So let me finish adding all these in-betweens. And see that super cool action. You're gonna add even more. I would add even more lines to really heighten that drama. And one thing you can do for when you're cutting a person to make it almost look like there's blood splattering, we're going to make it like the slice right here, and we're going to extend the person and create some action lines like this. Almost like you're cutting the essence so fast that they can't register it, you know? And see how that creates that even more sense of drama. And I would suggest you just add that white glow just to separate the action line from the characters itself. If you want to make it look like blood, you could just do something like this. And then add a few splatters. I don't know, depends on what kind of dots you like. Let me do this on a different layer so we can erase dots that we don't like. So you can either have those or not, depends on what you fancy. The lines for the head coming down can be even more dramatic. We can add some gaps between the head so he looks like he's falling so fast we can't see parts of his head. Same goes for the arms right here. I always try to have like a variety of long and short lines, big gaps, small gaps. And feel free to be like those manga artists and give me some SFX, be like zoom or splat. I don't know, some shit like that to help you make it even more filled out. I don't want to glow, I want to stroke maybe. Okay, that way you see how that kind of helps fill up the space a little bit, gives you more interest too. And we'll just talk about some last minute anatomy stuff so you have an idea of where to go for this guy right here. And maybe the spacing of these characters. Make your sword humongo for this guy. And if you're not sure how to do that, remember we're gonna draw the sword as a line first. Yeah, straight line across his big humongous sword fills up the space more. Splat. Yes, splat. Big splat. Okay, so you would just draw that, and then we're gonna draw the sword real quick, and then we'll move on to some of Greta's stuff because I gotta bounce soon. Okay, so big ol' honkin' sword, something like that. It's like a super rough of the arm. And then let's remember to make that triangle shape if we can. The leg will not go all the way up. Sorry to say. It's gonna stay down here. Okay, so maybe something like that would be okay for the sword. Obviously, you can maybe space out these characters more. You could put maybe another character right over here. I'm not drawing him properly, but whatever. These are like the most ugly, whatever. Okay, it's the idea. And then maybe I would even, if you don't draw action lines here, we can go for some smoke. So it's super atmospheric and every shit, you know? Some kind of shit. If it's actually Bob character. Okay, whatever. This is a great framing technique. I would just probably bring the shoulder back down here. His arm, his shoulder wouldn't go that high. Because if I'm doing this pose, right, you see how this shoulder gets dropped? It doesn't go all the way here. It's a very uncomfortable pose. So how do you tell? This is that top of the shoulder right here. So that means the shoulder should sit down here. And then we'll have to readjust a lot of the anatomy a little bit. So shoulder, shoulder. That means we actually have the arm should be a little bit closer up, but I guess I could forgive you and bring it out this way, but then that means the hand is going to be more flat. Something like that, okay? Shoulder is massive. Massive shoulder doesn't, it cannot, even if my shoulder was massive, I cannot deny that when you're raising this shoulder up, you cannot somehow raise this shoulder up also, especially when you're looking down at this angle, okay? So this is just basic perspective. If you want this shoulder to cover it, cover him up. Like, just try it, Jesse, try it right now. Like, if you're raising your arm like this, can you somehow bring your shoulder all the way up? I feel so weird, like I cannot put any strength to my swing, right? If you want this higher up, the only times that would happen is if you're holding the sword this way. Do you see how now I'm covering the face? And that's because I'm turning, and then this shoulder is going to cover up as I duck my head down. And this is going to be the higher shoulder. This is going to be your lower shoulder in that instance. And so there's always going to be a give and take. You can't have both shoulders do what you want. Only time you have both of them raised up is if you're doing this, you're shrugging your shoulder, or you raise your shoulder up like this. Okay, there's a give and take. We cannot, it's a seesaw, okay? And then finally also, for this guy, we can bump up his shoulder, make it nice and fat and juicy. So here's his shoulder. Right, the delts. We're going to make that torso a lot bigger on the top also. And even in this particular pose, you're gonna actually see a little bit more of that triceps because he is so built. Everything is popping out, you know? Okay, and then you might have just a little bit of that weird triangle or the little curve thingies I talked about. Don't neglect his neck. Even if he is built, he still has a neck. So starting from here, this shoulder, this neck muscle connects all the way down to that collarbone right here, which sits on the top of your shoulders, remember? And if you have that much muscle, this collarbone right here wouldn't really show too much. Let me use my other brush so it looks nicer. And I just want to make sure he is big booba because he is built af chest pecs. So almost like he would need a bra. He needs those C cups, those D cups. And then this part is definitely going to be a muscle that gets accentuated because again, everything is built in that upper torso, so that means we're gonna have more muscles popping out than you would normally have. And let's give him a booty because I don't want him to just have arms day. Okay, he had some leg day. And let's make both eyebrows symmetrical and bring up that forehead so he doesn't have a 3 head. And if you remember, when we're turning the face, this part of the eye gets shortened. Same for here, this is going to point down a little bit. And more is going to show. And you need to make sure that that mouth is pointing in the right direction. If this is that middle line right here, the middle of the mouth should sit right there. Okay. So those are the anatomy changes we'd make and some slight comic changes that we're gonna make. Let's jump into Greta's thing real quick and then I gotta bounce. So Greta, you choose which one you want me to talk about more. I could talk about this one to make it look a little bit more of like that melting effect that you wanted, or we can talk about what are some stuff you can fill in here, or I mean, you're not even done with this one, so I think it's not fair for me to talk about it too much, but I think it is on like the right direction. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. If you don't answer, it's on the Google Drive. Well, I did not download it. Let me go look at it right now. But did you want me to talk about that in particular, or you don't, or you want something else? Drive. Where is it? Where is it? Let's see. The most important page. Okay, let me do that then. Just some small comments for, not this one, for this one. If you want to make it look more melty, I would suggest you, or like more of like that weird dropping down repetition kind of thing, I would try to make the house more melty. So you could have like parts of the house sticking to each other as it's kind of falling out. So we could do something like this where parts of that house is sticking to each other as it's, you know, falling out. And then the house could get even more melty. Obviously this is like a a horrible way to edit your image, but okay, maybe something like that. You can make these more melty, make the windows more melty too. So that way we get that kind of everything is falling, you know, falling apart. Okay, so that's horrible. Let me pull up number 7. Ah, okay, I sees it. Let's open off screen so I don't... Let me close this. Replace the file. Okay. So cute. Anyway, if we're talking about environment wise, I think some things that you could potentially do is let's do some of our 1-point perspective / 2-point perspective kind of things. So for the background, oh Lord, Greta, why is it not separated? Ah! Okay. I'm gonna try to separate them. Okay, I think I got it. Let me just double check. Yeah, I don't accidentally nerf them. Okay, I'm gonna cut that out. And what's the environment? Okay, so for the kitchen, we can potentially have kitchen, showcase more. I don't know how your kitchen particularly looks like, but let me see. It does look like you have a slight island on this side and that. Let me see if we can. I would probably suggest we shrink everything down just a tad bit so you can see your background a little bit better. Okay, let me move this guy over. And that way you have better framing. So I know that we want you to be main character, but we still want to have some space. Of an island and then some things. Okay, so if we shrink you down a little bit, it'll give you some chance to see your background, and also, you know, your wall with things. You could use that to tell stories. How do I do this? I'm gonna bring this down just a tad bit. And then bring these up a tad bit. I know. Best way to edit. Because I want to give you some space so it's not sitting right on top of your head. Even if it's not 100% accurate, it'll give you a better, you know, vibe. And then you could put, like, I don't know, little pictures of like the previous pages so we can kind of do a recall of all that we've gone through throughout your magazine, your little comic. And then that way you can also see the ceiling and it'll look a little bit nicer. I don't know how the light's gonna hang, but maybe this is how your light hangs. And so the 1-point perspective that we're kind of receding is like super far back. So, but by adding this ceiling right here, you kind of break up the space more. You don't just have all these vertical lines. We have a little bit more of these diagonals and horizontals, right? Yeah, scoot this guy over. Shoop. Maybe some shit like that for the top of the lights. Your kitchen counter right here, you could totally put more personality into it. You could put, I don't know, if you have a bowl of fruit or if you maybe have like a vase. or maybe something significant. It could be just some flowers if you want. Like it's finally reached the end, that's why the flower, I don't know, is blooming. Some stuff like that. Let me see if we can fix the angle of the couch a little bit. Oh, definitely things got merged. I don't know if I can fix this. I will try. Okay, cut that out. Yes. But sofa is gonna get a little bit more space. Your foot's gonna get some space too. So if I imagine all this is going to the middle right here. Everything is somewhat going to the far middle, somewhere right around here, okay? So that means I want to make sure that this couch is doing a similar thing. It's not perfect, but and then maybe you could, I don't know if you have stools, but it feels like it could use a stool. How did I guess it? Because it's so empty. Definitely anyone who thinks it's empty is gonna add a stool. Business background. Oh no, no, I put it on the wrong layer, whatever. It's fine, we already agreed that we have a fucked up layer management system right now. Okay, and then I would suggest we do something to fill up this space. So, suggestion-wise, we can probably, I don't know. Oh, this is probably the end of the counter. Maybe put a toaster here. And you could have your cookbooks. I know that's a danger hazard, but this is fiction. And I definitely might want to add another plant right here just to help frame this image a little bit better. And you may not have a plant, but we're going to pretend you have a plant. Because do you see how that helps now bring everything focused back to the middle? And I don't know, you could put like a calendar here if you so choose, if your heart desires. And then maybe just to add a little bit of foreground element, we'll put a table. I'm pretty sure you guys have a coffee table in front of your sofa. No one ever has said they don't have one. And that way it will break up the space some more. So super small changes, super small, but it's gonna help you reveal your environment more, and it makes you look a lot happier with all the things that you got that you didn't expect, right? So your happy home, your cute little puppy, your boyfriend, everything. I mean, if you even wanted to, you could just do I don't know if this is something you would want. So this is totally optional, but this could potentially help you frame that this is, you know, what you didn't expect, but you got. Depends on how dark you want it. The darker you put it, the more dramatic it feels. If you don't have it, it looks less dramatic, looks super bright. Yes, if it's heavy, then definitely we could do, you know, your dark vignette. That way it kind of gives you the whole, wow, look, this is the one thing that you never expected, right? Let me see if I have anything else that I missed clean. Oh, no wonder. Let me just fix his glasses. He's bothering me. Okay, glasses. I want to make sure it's on the same height. So this is here, so we're gonna actually have it over here. We're not gonna see that gap. Let me see how his glasses looks. He's got the round shaped glasses. So here's his nose. And we're gonna round out the shape of those glasses just a tad bit. And let's give him some shape to the eyebrows. I know he doesn't have as much shape, but for this cartoon version, what you can do to make that eyebrow have shape is we're gonna create a triangle shape this way. That way you have defined shapes, because in cartoon you always want to simplify what you're seeing. So even though he has wispy hair here, we're gonna simplify into triangle. Yeah, I don't know, if it really depends on if you want that. If you don't want that, you could just do some stuff. If you want to make it more happy-go-lucky, you could just add some lights like this or something streaming over it so it doesn't look so empty up here. Or you could change, put a staircase or something, I don't know. Some weird shit, but that's the idea, that's the gist. Hopefully that helps a little bit with the composition wise. I think the storytelling is getting pretty interesting, Greta, especially with all the little symbolism that you're doing. So super excited to see how the end result looks like. I gotta dip, y'all. I need to go pick up my dinner, so I will, if I have time, I will add a little more comments to your other ones also, Greta, but for now I will just save these and then I'll share it with you guys, okay? All right, have a great dinner, have a great Friday, everybody. Hope your Memorial weekend was great, and then I will see you next month for our challenge, okay? Bye bye, bye bye.